Hello, this is Professor Asmi Parveen from Department of Psychology, and today I will discuss lab experiments. Experiments are important for scientists to gain a deeper understanding of how things work. By intentionally changing something and observing the results, scientists can uncover valuable insights. There are two main types of experiments: laboratory experiments and field experiments. In laboratory experiments, scientists conduct their investigations in controlled environments such as labs. This allows them to carefully manipulate variables and closely monitor the outcomes. On the other hand, field experiments take place in real world settings, whereas scientists or researchers observe natural phenomena without directly interfering with them. Both types of experiments can contribute to our understanding of the world around us. Psychology is also considered a science, and psychologists often conduct laboratory experiments to understand cause and effect relationships. In these experiments, researchers manipulate one variable while keeping everything else constant in order to observe how it affects another variable. For example, psychologists might use a lab experiment to investigate the impact of sleep on memory. To be considered scientific, psychological research must adhere to three important principles, that is, empirical evidence. Firstly, empirical evidence is crucial. This means that the findings of a study should be observable or experienced through our senses. Psychologists believe that if something cannot be seen or sensed, it cannot be considered scientifically valid. Secondly, reliability is essential. If another researcher wants to replicate the same study, they should obtain similar results. This ensures that the findings are consistent and can be trusted. Thirdly, validity is a key aspect of scientific research. A study should accurately measure what it intends to find out. In other words, the methods used should effectively capture the phenomena being studied. By following these three principles, psychologists aim to ensure that their research is rigorous and credible. Lab experiments are considered empirical when they are conducted correctly, as the researcher is able to observe changes in the dependent variable. To ensure reliability, standardized procedures are used, which means there is a set protocol for how the experiment will be carried out. This consistency increases the internal reliability of the study and allows other researchers to replicate the experiment and obtain similar results. In addition to reliability, lab experiments also focus on validity. These experiments are conducted in a controlled setting where the researcher has maximum control over the variables. This control helps prevent extraneous variables, which are factors not relevant to the research, from affecting the dependent variable. By minimizing the influence of these extraneous variables, the validity of the research is enhanced. Now I will discuss one example of lab experiment. In the field of psychology, lab experiments are commonly used to study human behavior and understand how individuals respond to different situations. One classic example of a lab experiment is Asch conformity study conducted in 1951. The main objective of this study, conducted by Asch in 1951, was to examine whether the presence and influence of others would lead participants to confirm and change their answers. During the experiment, participants were given two pieces of paper. One paper displayed a target line, while the other paper presented three lines of varying lengths, as you can see in the figure. The participants were then divided into groups of 8, unaware that the other 7 individuals in the group were actually part of the research team. These confederates were instructed to intentionally provide incorrect answers. The researchers wanted to observe if the actual participants would succumb to the pressure of conformity and alter their responses to match the incorrect answers given by the confederates. If they did, it would be considered an example of conformity. This study aimed to shed light on the power of social influence and the extent to which individuals are willing to conform to the opinions of others. This conformity study by Ash is just one of many well known lab experiments in psychology. Another notable example is Milgram's obedience study, which investigated how far individuals would go in obeying authority figures. Loftus and Palmer also conducted a lab experiment to explore the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. These experimenters chose the lab experiment method because it provides a high level of control over the variables being studied, allowing for more accurate observations and conclusions. Purpose of laboratory experiments. Laboratory experiments serve various purposes. For example, they allow researchers to uncover cause and effect relationships in controlled conditions, test predictions based on theories and previous research, and improve existing theories. While laboratory settings are often associated with experimental methods, social scientists face unique challenges when trying to bring a piece of society into the lab. How can they observe social behavior under different conditions, akin to watching something in a test tube? And what about astronomers? Do they bring the entire solar system into the lab? These questions have sparked debates, but advancements in research techniques and tools have helped address these issues. As a result, scholarship in the social sciences has made significant progress, building upon solid foundations of the scientific method. But in order to understand experimental research, it is important to be familiar with the different components of an experiment. And one of the important component is the variable. Variables are elements that can be altered. There are two types of variables, the independent variable and the dependent variable. The independent variable is the one that is manipulated or changed in the experiment, while the dependent variable is associated with the control group and is considered the effect or criterion variable. The experimental group consists of subjects who are randomly assigned to receive the treatment. The purpose of the experimental group is to test the effects of the independent variable. The treatment refers to the specific condition that is applied to the experimental group. In the field of education, treatment may involve the development of various programs such as educational programs focused on user education and information literacy can also be considered as part of the treatment. Another important factor is random assignment. In conducting experiments, it is important for the experimenter to have control over the factors that could potentially influence the outcome. However, this is easier to achieve in natural sciences than in social sciences due to the complexity of the subjects involved in social sciences. To address this challenge, researchers utilize random assignment, which involves randomly assigning subjects to experimental and control groups. This random assignment is crucial for statistical tests that determine the significance of experimental results. Another important term in experiments is subjects. Subjects are the individuals on whom experiments are conducted, and they can vary depending on the field of the study. In library and information science, as well as social sciences, subjects often consist of people such as librarians or users. Another important term is control group. Another important term is control group. Control is a fundamental aspect of experimental research, and it sets it apart from other research methods. The control group serves as a comparison group where no experiments are conducted. Although they, although they do not receive the treatment, the control group helps provide valuable insight. Although they do not receive the treatment, the control group helps to provide valuable insights. Next term is cause and effect relationship. In scientific experiments, researchers use a cause and effect relationship to understand how different variables are connected. They manipulate one variable called the independent variable and observe how it affects another variable called the dependent variable. This allows them to draw conclusions about how the independent variable may impact the dependent variable. Before starting an experiment, researchers often conduct a pre-test. This involves measuring the dependent variable after randomly assigning subjects to either an experimental group or a control group. The purpose of the pretest is to establish a baseline measurement before any treatments or interventions are introduced. Once the pretest is complete, researchers move on to the post-test. During the post-test, they measure the dependent variable again for both the experimental and control groups after the treatment has been introduced. By comparing the results of the pre-test and post-test, researchers can determine if the treatment had any effect on the dependent variable. By using this method, researchers are able to analyze the cause and effect relationship between variables in their experiments. They can see how manipulating the independent variable influences the dependent variable, and this allows them to make informed conclusions about the impact of the independent variable on the dependent variable. Laboratory experiments offer several advantages, and one of these is the high level of control that can be achieved. In a laboratory setting, all factors that could potentially influence the results are tightly regulated. This ensures that the experiment accurately measures the intended variables and minimizes the chance of other factors interfering with the findings. By controlling these variables, researchers can confidently study how changes in one thing affect another. Another advantage of laboratory experiments is the use of standardized procedures. These procedures are followed by everyone involved in the experiment, creating the same conditions for each participant. This standardization allows for the replication of the experiment by others, ensuring that the results are not just a one time occurrence. The ability to replicate an experiment is crucial in confirming its reliability and validity. It allows for further testing and verification of the initial findings. In a lab setting, researchers have another advantage of being able to draw causal conclusions from their experiments. This means that they can confidently state that one thing causes another. The reason for this is because in a controlled lab experiment, all variables can be carefully managed and accounted for. This includes any additional factors that could potentially impact the results. By controlling these variables, researchers can ensure that any changes observed in the dependent variable are directly caused by the independent variable. As a result, they can have a high level of confidence in the validity of their findings. Lab experiments also have certain weaknesses which are important to consider. One weakness is that they often fail to replicate real life situations. These experiments take place in a controlled environment that does not accurately mimic what happens in the real world. As a result, it becomes challenging to apply the findings to real life scenarios, leading to what we call low ecological validity. Essentially, this means that the results may not hold true outside of the lab due to the lack of realism in the experiment. Another issue with the lab experiments is the presence of demand characteristics. This occurs when the participants in the experiment receive cues from the setting that influence their behavior or understanding of what the researchers are seeking. Since the participants are aware that they are part of an experiment, they may have preconceived notions about what the researchers expect from them. Consequently, their behaviors can be altered, potentially skewing the outcome of the study. Therefore, the accuracy and validity of the findings may not meet our desired standards. When conducting lab experiments, it is very crucial to prioritize ethics. This is because these experiments involve people and can touch on sensitive topics. One important ethical consideration is obtaining informed consent from participants. Before someone can take part in an experiment, researchers must ensure that they fully understand what they are getting into. This involves providing clear and easy to understand information about the purpose of the study, the procedures involved, any potential risk or discomforts, and the right to withdraw from the study at any time without facing consequences. Deception is another ethical consideration that researchers must carefully navigate. In some cases, researchers may need to deceive participants in order to prevent them from altering their behavior. However, this deception should be minimized and have a valid reason behind it. At the conclusion of the experiment, researchers have the responsibility to fully explain any deception that was used and ensure that participants comprehend the true purpose of the study before they leave. Another important ethical consideration is ensuring that participation in these experiments is completely voluntary. No one should be forced or pressured into taking part, and participants should have the freedom to say no or withdraw from the study at any time without facing negative consequences. This protects the rights and autonomy of individuals involved. Confidentiality and anonymity are also key ethical considerations. Researchers must take measures to protect the personal information and data collected from participants. This involves securely storing the data using codes instead of names to identify participants and only sharing journal findings to avoid revealing anyone's identity. By safeguarding confidentiality, researchers uphold the trust and privacy of the individuals involved. Furthermore, researchers have a responsibility to minimize harm to participants. This can involve screening potential participants for any pre existing condition that could be negatively affected by the study. Additionally, providing appropriate support or counseling services may be necessary to ensure the well being of participants throughout the research process. After the study concludes, it is important to debrief participants in order to address any potential negative effects their participation may have had on them. In conducting experiments, researchers also have a responsibility to treat participants with respect and sensitivity. This involves recognizing and valuing their autonomy, cultural differences, and personal beliefs. It is also important to ensure that participants do not undergo unnecessary stress, discomfort, or embarrassment throughout the research process. Furthermore, researchers must adhere to the principles of fairness and equality when working with participants, regardless of their background or characteristics. This means avoiding any form of discrimination or bias when selecting participants, assigning treatments, or analyzing data. Every individual should be given an equal opportunity to participate and contribute to the study. When conducting research, researchers must carefully weigh the potential benefits against the potential risk to both participants and society as a whole. And they should thoroughly analyze these risks and benefits, ensuring that the benefits outweigh any potential harm. Additionally, researchers should also strive to distribute the advantages and burdens of research fairly among all participants and society at large. By considering all these ethical guidelines in laboratory experiments, researchers can adhere to the principle of ethical conduct, and this ensures that the well being and rights of participants are protected while still allowing for valuable scientific research to be conducted. Now, I will discuss applications of lab experiment. Lab experiments are a very important tool in various fields and subjects, each with its own unique objectives and methodologies. And one such field where lab experiments play a significant role is psychology. In this discipline, researchers utilize lab experiments to delve into the intricacies of human behavior, cognition, and emotions. By conducting experiments, scientists can gain insights into topics like memory, perception, decision making, social influence, and mental disorders. The controlled nature of lab experiments allows researchers to manipulate variables while keeping other factors constant in enabling them to establish cause and effect relationships. Another area where lab experiments are extensively employed is cognitive science and neuroscience. These disciplines employ specialized techniques such as functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI, electroencephalography or EEG, and position emission tomography or PET scans to investigate brain activity and cognitive processes. Through these experiments, researchers aim to unravel the workings of our minds, including how we perceive the world, allocate attention, form memories, experience emotions, and make decisions. The findings from these studies contribute to the development of new theories and models that enhance our understanding of the human mind. Lab experiments also play a crucial role in biomedical research, allowing scientists to delve into the complexities of diseases, test potential treatments, and gain a deeper understanding of how our bodies function. By conducting these experiments, researchers can unravel the mysteries behind ailments such as cancer, diabetes, and brain disorders while also developing innovative medicines, therapies, and medical devices. In the realm of environmental science, lab experiments also hold equal significance. They provide scientists with a means to explore the intricacies of the environment, measure pollution levels, and assess the impact of human activities on ecosystems. Through these experiments, scientists can recreate various environmental conditions, quantify the extent of pollution, and observe how contaminants affect living organisms and entire ecosystems. Armed with this knowledge, we are better equipped to make informed decisions regarding environmental conservation and preservation. It is important to note here that lab experiments extend far beyond just biomedical and environmental research. They serve as a valuable tool across a wide range of disciplines, enabling scientists to manipulate and control conditions, obtain precise measurements, and meticulously observe phenomena. This invaluable resource empowers researchers to expand their knowledge, tackle complex problems, and generate novel ideas in diverse fields of study. This is all about lab experiments. Thank you.